Once upon a time, genius inventors William Afton and Henry Emily opened a pizzeria called Fredbear's Family Diner. In this pizzeria, there were two animatronics, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. And everything was fine until one fateful day. When William Afton went outside the pizzeria, he drove up in his car, and, against all odds, he added Yellow Foxy. So, last video I talked about a bunch of old, crusty Fredbear fan games, and in this video I want to talk about some ones that are more modern. And by modern I mean like, some of these are like 7 years old, but you know. I want to talk about fan games that'll stand toe-to-toe in quality with Scott Cawthon's own products. But I figured I'd get a fan game to sort of ease into things, a good middle ground. So I'm going to talk about Five Nights at Fredbear's Family Diner 2 Remastered. What? This is such an interesting fan game because, on one end, this is so polished and nicely done, like technical-wise, but then when you look at the game, I mean, look at it. This is quite possibly the hardest game to look at that I've ever played. Like, I'm gonna try to be scarce about the footage. I might slow the footage down, to be honest, just because there is so much flashing and flickering. Like, this is probably the most annoying camera static I've ever had to deal with in a FNAF game. This is atrocious. If you're sensitive to flashing lights or anything, do not play this game. Just don't. Now, I should probably mention, I could not find the original version of this game. I'm actually playing a remastered, like, recoded version of it, which is why it has this weird clash of the really polished Click Team FNAF gameplay with some questionable visuals. What would you do if this happened to you? Now, I would very much prefer to play the original version of the game, since I think that would be much more, proper, but all I could find was a Game Jolt page where this is the only comment, so I'm just not going to touch that. This game would be so much more enjoyable without the flickering, because I think the gameplay loop of this is actually pretty alright. Toy Fredbear, classic character, he walks down the pizzeria very quickly, and he shows up at your door, and you hold your flashlight on him, and he goes away. Toy Spring Bonnie and Withered Spring Bonnie just come down the hallway and they will just stand in your office and you need to put on your Freddy mask. And then Fredbear comes to your office and you need to put on your Freddy mask. And there's also a music box that drains very, very quickly, so this game definitely, you can't take your eyes off of it. It is a bit of a boring gameplay loop, but I think it's perfectly fine. And everything functions as intended. Also, this Toy Spring Bonnie design is so funny to me because, like, let's just take a picture of Toy Bonnie. Let me hue shift it, and there we go, we did it. They literally just hue shifted him. Like, you can't make this up. Okay, Golden Fredbear, Toy Freddy, whatever you want to call him, he's pretty sick, though. And this game has a bunch of classic characters. I mean, look at Spring Bonnie. I think the best way to describe this game, like, in terms of, like, aesthetics and gameplay combined, it's like if you were playing the original Mario Bros. And it looked like this, but the controls were like Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Honestly, there's not much to say about this game that I didn't say about the first game. I just think this remake existing is funny. So let's move on to an interesting little title. So in the last video, I talked about this game, Fredbear and Friends Out of the Machine, and, just in case you didn't know, I didn't think that game was very good. But I also mentioned that the creator of that game made some other FNAF fan games that I remember being much better, which included Fredbear's Fright and Fredbear and Friends Left to Rot. I'm going to start with Fredbear's Fright, but I will talk about both of them in this video. Fredbear's Fright, I like this game a lot. This is I don't even know how this is made by the same person. And for being a 7-year-old FNAF fan game, this is honestly really great at replicating Scott's style. This game has excellent aesthetics. It's like you mushed FNAF 3 and FNAF 1 styles together, and I think it works extremely well, especially for the setting of this game. That setting being the FNAF 1 location repurposed into a horror attraction called Fredbear's Fright, although the layout does not completely line up. But I personally don't mind the layout inconsistency with FNAF 1 because it honestly just makes this game's map more interesting. And this game's cast of animatronics includes Fredbear, obviously, Spring Bonnie, who's looking a little, some big chunk is a GameStop. Fredbear has a really hilarious game mechanic, so, like, he leaves the stage, and then eventually he'll show up in your office, and when he shows up in your office, you have to pull a switch in the office that pours water on him, and that makes him leave. I don't know why this switch is here. The phone guy says it's to refill your water bottle in the morning, and nothing about this contraption makes sense. It's clearly meant to be like a fire emergency sprinkler, but it's only in one room and there's no alarm, it just turns on the sprinkler. And Spring Bonnie basically leaves the stage, and then eventually he'll try coming through the vent, you gotta close the vent, and that's pretty much it. And the same game mechanic is used for the two little hand puppets. I think it's kind of redundant that Spring Bonnie and the hand puppets both do the same thing at the vent. I think I'd prefer Spring Bonnie did something unique, but I guess it makes the gameplay loop more simple. All three of these guys just show up at the vent, you close it, they leave, then that's it. There's Scrapped Mouseki, and Mouseki shows up at the doorway, and when he shows up at the door, you close it. We got this other Fredbear who's just like a blank endoskeleton wearing a mask, and this guy, he calls you on the phone, gives you a code, and you need to type it into the number pad on the wall, or else he'll kill you. Which is a very funny game mechanic, but it's also kind of cool. It reminds me of Lolbit's mechanic, but it's less stupid. Then we got the prototype endoskeleton, who's kind of like the Foxy of this game, but instead of watching him, keeping him at bay, you more so just have to watch him to make sure he hasn't left yet, because as soon as he leaves, you need to close the door to your office or else he's gonna get you. But to my knowledge, there's no way to slow down his progress of leaving his room. It's just a matter of paying attention to him. And also, when he leaves his room, he wears this weird rat mask, and it's like, is this Mouseki? What's going on? So, I don't know. I like this game a lot. I don't understand a lot about it, but it has a fun gameplay loop. This is a nice little fan game. You know, I had a fun time playing it, and, you know, I would recommend it. For how old this fan game is, I really do think it's impressive. And it understands a lot of really good core design elements of the old FNAF games and replicates them very well. This game also probably features the most unenthusiastic phone guy death of all time, and I mean that with full sincerity. There is no competition. This guy did not care at all about dying.
Hey, I was on my way over to see you. Prototype is doing something terrible. Tonight has been very good for me. I don't know what to do. Just don't worry about me, okay? Oh no.
And just like that, he's dead. Amazing vocal performance. I really felt the emotion. I felt like that's a great story. I felt like I was really there. Oh no. Like that's your reaction? You're about to get killed by this guy? That's your reaction? This game has a final boss who is amalgamation, and his name is Fright, and he looks like this, and he's funny.
Welcome to the Fredbear's Family Diner, rebranding concept for all chain locations.
I like how the voiceover here is clearly the exact same guy from Fredbear's Fright, but it's like 30 years earlier, so like this guy is just like really old, but he still sounds 19. Easily the most iconic part of this whole game is this opening. This is such a good way to open the game. The taped up Fredbear mouth is such an iconic visual. I think everybody's seen that at this point. Like, if you're any bit into fan games, you've probably seen this. And when I was younger, I didn't really think about this opening that much, but I'm really just like, I'm trying to think about this concept it portrays, that Fredbear and Spring Bonnie were retrofitted into Freddy and Bonnie. But it doesn't really make any sense in the way this is portrayed, because you see in the tape, they just replaced the endoskeleton outright, but they still act like you're replacing the same animatronic when you're really not. Like, I guess it implies the legs are the same, but like, why is that a thing? If you're gonna make a new endoskeleton, why not just replace the legs on top of that? Like, they're basically different animatronics, and retrofitting Fredbear's into Freddy's makes even less sense because they add new characters in Freddy's. Freddy's has 2 more animatronics, and this is addressed by this scene.
Place Bonnie's head over the new endoskeleton head. Okay then, now all that's left to do is to place the characters in their proper locations. Building updates and stage props will be covered in a future tape. Place Chica to Freddy's right.
And that's it. They just put Chica there. I don't know, like, where'd she come from? Was she retrofitted for something? No. But if they can just, I don't know. Like, the endoskeletons, the other ones are already basically entirely new, and their suits are entirely new. You're not really retrofitting the animatronics. You're just, like, If you take apart a car and replace every single part of it, it's not the same car anymore. Here's an epic tutorial how to turn your Freddy action figure into a Bonnie action figure. First, you take Freddy, replace Freddy's limbs with the epic Bonnie limbs, then replace the torso and head with the Bonnie torso and head. Like and subscribe for more tutorials. Sorry, I don't know why I felt so passionate about that topic. Let's move on to talking about the actual game.
Welcome to the interactive control tape for Fazbear Entertainment Animatronics.
Hi there, I'm Freddy, and I'm ready for us to go on an awesome adventure.
So, Fredbear and Friends Left to Rot goes in a completely different direction than Fredbear's Fright in the sense that it pretty much just gives you a different FNAF scenario to play every night rather than just being a basic FNAF game like Fredbear's Fright was. So basically, one of them's more similar to FNAF 1 through 4, the other one's more similar to Sister Location. And I think Fredbear and Friends Left to Rot does the Sister Location style gameplay formula pretty well. Aside from a few very annoying design decisions that really bothers me, but who cares about that, okay? This game has a new voice actor, listen.
The animatronics interact as security, so if any wander into your office, hide underneath the desk.
Now that's revolutionary for this series, let's be honest. Isn't that annoying design decision? So, this game every single night seems to throw some kind of mechanic at you that you had literally no way of knowing, so the game is basically designed for you to die to the enemy pretty much immediately whenever you try the night, and then you have to go to the main menu and look at the tips menu to find out what you were supposed to do in that situation, rather than explaining it in the night itself. It doesn't ruin the game, but it's very, very annoying to me. Like, I don't know why you would design the game like this. The only thing I could think of is to make sure everybody sees the jump scares every time, but I don't know, just use an extras menu for that. But there is an extras menu in this game, but there's no, like, jump scares option on it, which is kind of baffling to me, to be honest. But this first night is pretty neat. Basically, you're in the office at Fredbear's, and Fredbear and Spring Bonnie are on the move, as well as the prototype endoskeleton, and basically all you have to do is make sure the endoskeleton doesn't go down the hallway, make sure you flash your light on him on your camera, and then also, when Fredbear or Spring Bonnie reach your office, you need to duck under your desk. But the twist here is that you're actually actively trying to disable your security systems, and when you're trying to do this, you obviously, the further you get into the night, the less you can actually see of where the animatronics are. So it's pretty cool in that way. I don't think this gameplay could work for a full 5 nights, but as a little one-night thing, I think this works really well. A FNAF gameplay situation where you're trying to turn off your equipment is pretty creative. This is kind of like a better version of the breaker room in Sister Location, because in that, you're trying to turn off the systems in the facility or whatever, but they don't really mean anything to you. It's just a thing you have to do while Funtime Freddy's in the background. In this scenario, turning off the things actively makes you have less visibility of your threat. Also, this game's visuals are just really good. Like, this really makes you feel like you're there in, like, a scary, dark pizzeria, because I think the camera system is very authentic looking. It's definitely the most realistic camera system I've seen in any of these games. The 3D click team effects in this game are excellently done, and I think all the animatronic designs in this game are pretty cool. I think the second night of this game sucks. So the second night of this game is very boring and lame in my opinion. So you're in this warehouse, right? One side of the warehouse is a door that you have to hold down this button on to charge up the door so you can leave. You're trying to charge up an electric security door so you can open it and leave. Makes sense. But on the other side of the room, there's this curtain with this clown guy named Max inside of it. And every time Max comes out of his curtain, you have to press a button to close his curtain so he doesn't get you. Closing his curtain will drain your power, while the simple act of not holding down the button will also drain your power. So basically, this door button needs constant attention, meanwhile this guy also needs attention every once in a while to close his stupid curtain, which will set back your progress. So it's kind of just frustrating. I didn't find this fun or particularly scary, unlike the last night. This was definitely pretty lame and I don't like it. So let's just hope this next night is a bit scarier, because this one wasn't that great. Alright, let's see here. Oh, this isn't so bad. This is pretty... Ah! So anyway, Nightmare Mouseki might be a bit too scary for me. We're on a tight schedule, so let's just take a quick gander at all the other animatronics in this game. And I usually don't beat these games for the videos anyway, you guys know this. Although I do feel a bit worse about not beating this game for the video because, like, I don't know, this game has so much unique content in it. Like, every night is a different thing. I kind of want to see what else this has to offer. Maybe someday I'll make Fredbear and Friends Left to Rot Part 2 review? What? I at least want to pay some credit to the awesome animatronic designs for the rest of this game, so let's take a look at them. Nightmare Mouseki. Like I said, he's a bit too scary for me. Then we got Nightmare Mouseki's partner in crime. Then we got Suit, and that's just funny. He doesn't have a name. His name is just Suit. I'll be honest though, Suit has good vibes. He might be one of my favorite, like, Spring Freddy designs. He's just got a positive attitude. We got the Rotten animatronics, which are exactly what they sound like. They're the original animatronics, but they're, like, rotted away, and these look awesome. I really, really like these. I like it as, like, an alternate take on what the Withered animatronic designs could be. The idea of, like, the fabric of the suit just kind of rotting away from, like, heat and stuff. I like how this looks a lot. These are really cool. Although Rotten Freddy has, like, maggots in his mouth, and that's really nasty. Also, the wires on these guys just look absolutely crazy. We got the security animatronics, who I remember really liking back in the day when this game came out. Like, these are just fun. They're these little, like, short versions of the animatronics that have, like murder weapons. They're like little Chucky dolls. Now, sadly, there's only 3 of them. We got Security Freddy, who has a knife, just a regular old knife. I like how their faces look. They're very creepy. We got Security Bonnie, who has very angry eyebrows for some reason, and he carries an axe, which is badass. And then, obviously, the last one is going to be Security Fredbear, because it's Fredbear and Friends, and he has a chainsaw, like Vigilante. This next fan game is called Five Nights at Freddy's The Beginnings, and you may recognize the person who made it. It was made by Andrew John 100, and if you don't know who Andrew John 100 is, you need to be educated. Andrew John is the greatest man I've ever seen. Andrew John has a perfect soul, and you have a soul of dirt! Basically, Andrew John makes some of the most charming FNAF SFM videos I've ever seen, in my opinion, as well as being the undefeated greatest FNAF Plus channel. So when I was told in the comment section of my last video that Andrew John made FNAF fan games, I was like, okay, I gotta check this out. And this one was perfect for the theme of the video. I just want to put a side note in here because I'm stupid and I don't know what I'm doing when I make videos. I don't think you guys realize this. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I just need to ask you guys a question. So how come when I record old Click Team games sometimes it records and it's like really tiny in the corner of the screen like this? Why is OBS doing this? Can someone let me know? Anyway, let's actually talk about the game. I'll just zoom in the footage. Oh, that is crusty. But this title screen music is kind of fire. The game opens with a newspaper, as legally obligated, and...
Hello? Hello?
You're not Andrew John, who are you? But anyway, this game has a neat idea here, because it takes the 2 common ideas for a Fredbear FNAF Origins game. It's either the location that the Withered animatronics originally came from, or it's the original Fredbear's location. Well, this is the location the Withered animatronics came from, with the Fredbear and Spring Bonnie animatronics inside of it. So you really get the best of both worlds, and I think it's a smart way to approach this idea. Also, I appreciate how this is a fan game that puts a lore-accurate Fredbear model in it, since most fan games tend to redesign Fredbear since many people find his Ultimate Custom Night design boring, and I get that, but respecting canon is cool sometimes too. Scott Cawthon clearly intends for Fredbear to be a slightly altered Golden Freddy. He created Fredbear. I feel like he has the authority here. That is the correct answer, as much as people on Twitter would like to tell you otherwise. That is objectively correct, even if you don't like it. But anyway, I'd say this is a pretty by-the-books FNAF fan game. There's nothing really that bad about it, but there's also nothing really too interesting about it, but I don't really want to mean that as a bad thing. There's nothing bad about making something tried and true. Although I keep dying to Spring Bonnie, and I don't know why. Like, I feel like I'm getting under the desk fast enough, but he always manages to kill me. Oh yeah, the desk in this game is basically just the Freddy mask from FNAF 2. It functions identically, except instead of putting on a mask, you're getting under a desk. Some animatronics will come to the vent doors. When they show up at the vent, you close it. Pretty simple. You have power, you have to keep an eye on Foxy. This is pretty damn standard stuff, but it's not bad. Everything seems to function as intended, although I do think the time for how long you have to get under the desk is a bit too strict. I also find it weird how there's this giant door in the middle of the office, but it's pitch black and there's not really any way to look into it. You don't get a flashlight or anything. It honestly doesn't really make sense how dark it is because the building is very well lit. We can see what that hallway looks like on the cameras. It is not dark. I honestly think the office in this game is one of the weakest aspects. It's really not all that visually interesting, and the giant black void in the middle of it definitely doesn't help. But all in all, there's really nothing wrong with this game. It's alright. I was kind of hoping for more to talk about, but no, there's not really a lot for me to say about this game. I imagine there's a lot more for me to say about Andrew John's original FNAF games, which is Nightmare at Charles. I'm very interested in checking those out, and maybe those are a story for another day. I wish I could spend more time with this game, but there's really not much else to cover, so yeah, it's pretty alright. Now moving on. In the last video, I mentioned Those Nights at Fredbear's a ton, and for those of you who don't know or don't remember, Those Nights at Fredbear's is a cancelled FNAF fan game created by Nixon, the person who would later go on to create The Joy of Creation and enter the Fazbear fanverse. Now, prior to Those Nights at Fredbear's cancellation, it had gotten a ton of traction online. People were very excited for this ambitious free-roam FNAF prequel. So naturally, after it was cancelled, many people decided to try to take it into their own hands and make the game themselves. And many of these remakes are, quite frankly, not that great. But one that particularly caught my eye was this one, Those Nights at Fredbear's New Destiny. This game looks insanely high quality and was in development for over 5 years. And 5 years of development for a small fan project is always so cool to see, and I just had to check this game out. Especially when this is probably the closest we're ever gonna get to being able to play Those Nights at Fredbear's. So without further ado, let's get into this game. The first thing that I would like to note about this remake is that they have replaced this iconic Fredbear model that Nixon made with this one. Now, this one is good, but this one is disgusting in a very specific way, and it's not quite Those Nights at Fredbear's without this. So if the developer of this version is watching, can you please upload a different version of the game that's the exact same thing, but you swap out the Fredbear model for this? Because I think that'd be pretty cool. Could you speak up, man? I can't hear you. So for starters, this is an extremely polished game. It is definitely very, generic Unreal Engine 4 FNAF free roam, but honestly, it's probably one of the best feeling ones I've had. There's not really any clunkiness to the movement. Opening the doors and stuff feels fine. Pretty much everything about how this game controls is great. You even get a mechanic to lean left and right so you can get a look into the life of someone with scoliosis like me. Now, this game is definitely faithful to Nixon's original vision, but it definitely takes a lot of liberties and tries to improve upon things that we saw in the original footage we had of Those Nights at Fredbear's, and I think that's pretty cool. Something I noticed is that the building is pretty deliberately designed to be confusing. It's basically just a big maze, and a lot of the rooms look very similar, so it's easy to get lost, but I think that's probably by design. There aren't very many landmarks to know where you are, so finding your way back to your office is always a struggle. The main animatronics in the game are obviously Spring Freddy and Spring Bonnie with their original models, and these models are pretty alright, although I will say they do look pretty out of place next to the very modern updated Fredbear model that's featured in the game, and I already made my comment about the model change, but genuinely it is an improvement. An unbelievable improvement. If the original model is actually the worst thing ever made, I like it for that, but it is the worst thing ever made. I think it's mainly just this Fredbear has such high resolution textures and such a high poly count, and I think these models are kind of the opposite, even though I think all of the models are good. The game has a regular security office to set yourself up in with 2 doors on the sides, and I quite like the sound that they make. It's very light.
Now that you're in the office, there are 2 large metal doors that you can close in case there's any major threat inside the building.
But this game is very easily cheesable. And what I mean by that is, you start out in your office, right? But you can just go out into the pizzeria. And there's so many places in this pizzeria to hide in, and it's just this big labyrinth. So the chances of the low amount of animatronics actually finding you when you go hide somewhere here is pretty slim. Like, for example, I got past the first night by going inside of the kitchen and then leaving the kitchen and going to fill the generator when it got too low, then going back into the kitchen, and I never ran into an animatronic. Oh yeah, that's a thing. The generator in this game is how you prevent Fredbear from getting up. If the power runs out, big ol' fat Fredbear is gonna get off his stage and run to you and kill you. And you can go into the generator room and refill the generator, and when you refill it, that just prevents him, basically. You can refill it as many times as you need just need to actually go inside the room to do it. And as long as Freddy and Bonnie are out of your way, you're pretty much safe as far as I'm concerned. And I think this kind of says something about free roam FNAF games, where a simple survive the night formula doesn't really work as well in this format. Free roaming obviously has so many more variables than being trapped in one room, and it's very easy to just never run into an animatronic, so the workaround here is usually giving the player objectives that put them directly in the line of danger. Let's use FNAF Security Breach as an obvious example. The Pizzaplex is a giant map with infinite amounts of places you could go where an animatronic would literally never find you, which is why the game forces you into situations involving the animatronics in order to progress. I think the animatronic AI in Those Nights at Fredbear's is pretty great, and if it was applied to something with a bit more of an objective, I think it could be really great. But the first 2 nights of this game are very easily cheesed because I discovered in the generator room there's a blind spot where an animatronic can walk into the room then leave and not see you. So you can just sit here at the generator for the entire night, refill the generator when it gets too low, and then once it hits 6 a.m., you're not going to have a very hard time getting to the door since it's only a few rooms away. And then there, you're done. You can get out. So, first 2 nights of this game are literally the easiest thing if you sit in the corner of the generator room, so that's a bit of a shame. Now, the entire game is not cheesable this way because on night 3, a variable is introduced, which is Plush Trap. I don't really understand Plush Trap. The phone guy tells me about Plush Trap's existence as soon as the night starts. I go and try to do my usual generator strategy, not thinking much of it, and then the little bastard runs into the room, breaks the generator, and then Fredbear kills me. Now, the tips menu for Plush Trap says that he travels between shelves, and you need to grab him and take him as far away from the generator as possible because he's trying to break it. Now, I got a question, okay? What do you mean he travels between shelves? What could that possibly mean? Are they like portals? Does he go between them? There's no vents or anything. I don't know how that works. Does he stop to take rests at shelves? I don't know. But the thing about this is that this is one little tiny guy, and there are a million identical shelves in this building. How am I supposed to find him? I'm not good at video games, and I couldn't figure this one out, guys. Especially when I would always run into Fredbear's Spring Bonnie while I'm trying to find him. I guess the Plush Trap thing is kind of what I asked for. It is an objective, but I really don't think an objective like this works in a map that's this confusing. I think a better objective than Plush Trap to have during the night would probably be something like, I don't know, you gotta go around the building to specific rooms and you need to restock the shelves. Something simple like that. Just like something that'll keep you in a room for an extended period of time and then gives the animatronics time to make way to you, and then you gotta try to do all the shelves until you can leave. There's a shelf-related thing that involves all the shelves and isn't confusing, rather than a shelf-related objective where this guy is somewhere but you don't know where. This game basically takes place on a FNAF Backrooms level, and I think the map is my absolute biggest issue with the game. Visually, I think this game is great. The lighting and everything, and the textures and everything, this game looks very pretty, but the map is laid out in a very frustrating way, and too many rooms look way too similar to each other. I think the map design is definitely something that this should have strayed further away from Nixon's original game in terms of what it did. Because this map is indeed very faithful to how the map appeared in the original trailers that Nixon put out. It's just that I don't think it works very well in execution. This game looks very good, it has very good animatronic AI, everything seems to work as intended, it's just very unconventional. I think the gameplay loop here just isn't very fun, which is a shame. I'll give the game this, it is definitely scary, but my favorite kinds of horror games are ones that balance being scary with being engaging. This is a horrifying animatronic maze, but it's not really anything else. I did get very scared at multiple points playing this though. And, all things considered, I really don't think this game is that far off from what the actual gameplay of those nights at Fredbear's would have ended up like. Even though I am being very critical of this game, there is still a lot to love here. Making a 3D FNAF game is such a difficult task as a game designer, especially when you're trying to incorporate aspects of FNAF's original game design. Like, this game is very dedicated to keeping original aspects of FNAF, like the doors and the cameras and the generator. But the doors are only in your office that you're not supposed to stay in, and so are the cameras. I don't know what the best way to make a free roam FNAF game that keeps the core aspects of FNAF in it is, and I don't think anybody will ever figure it out, to be honest. With the two official free roam FNAF games, there's Security Breach, which is basically just a stealth horror game with FNAF office segments in it sometimes. And then you got Secret of the Mimic, which is just a stealth horror game. I think Secret of the Mimic is a great game, and so does most of the FNAF community seemingly, but that game doesn't even attempt to give you any original FNAF gameplay elements. But who knows, maybe someday there will be a genius out there who will create a free roam FNAF game that seamlessly incorporates FNAF mechanics. Only time will tell. This video is about Fredbear, by the way.
All kinds of neat and magical places for us to visit, like the mysterious ice cave.